Example that's coming to mind from the fiction, we mentioned the novels that Ayn Rand wrote. Well, in one of the novels, Atlas Shrugged, we actually see this issue of collectivized ethics come up. Here's an example that I always found very interesting and just explained the issue for me. There's a industrialist who creates a new metal. It's a new metal that's better, it's stronger, it can be used in all kinds of new ways. It's revolutionary metal here. And what happens is the question becomes, well, who should control the access and use of that metal? Shouldn't that metal be available to everybody? If it's so good, shouldn't that be available to everyone? So why should only this industrialist be able to sell that metal? What about the public good and everyone else? Mm-hmm. Now, in this case, we have an industrialist who eventually stands up and says, the public good be damned. Mm-hmm. So that tells you something about Ayn Rand's answer to the question. But it was interesting that in Atlas Shrugged, we see her ethics played out through the story.
Yeah, and this collectivized view is pervasive in the culture, not just in ethics. I mean, you indicated a political example, too, in that of Henry Reardon, the industrialist. And I think she had a view of collectivism as really on the rise in America and as having no place in it. And I think the essay Racism really brings that to light.
Yeah, it does. So racism, what Ayn Rand is analyzing there is what happens when people take the physiological characteristics of a person and judge that person by those things that he doesn't control at all, his physiology, his genetics, his background. Ayn Rand actually called that, one of the lowest, crudest, most primitive forms of collectivism. And she rejected any kind of racist type of approach to an individual, judging people by that nature. And we see that played out in her fiction too.
Yeah, it's fascinating because one of the We the Living, in fact, which is set in Soviet Russia, it is an example of a society ruled by this idea of collectivism. Mm-hmm. And even though they're not judging people by skin color, right, or by more obvious things like a tribal identity, they're judging people by unchosen characteristics, right, and they're in a sense being collectivist, a form of that, and it's just as bad. It's horrific. Mm-hmm. The example I think is Kira Argunova, who I think she's purged from university, or that there's a threat of that kind of thing because of who her parents are, or her ancestors, which is in essence the same kind of thinking that the Klansmen have about black people being inferior. It's unchosen characteristic, which is a form of collectivism.
Right. We see in the novel, we see Kira and the other characters being asked over and over again, or being branded over and over again, because of what the family and the father and the grandfather and the generations prior have done. And that, doesn't matter what Kira has done, doesn't matter what her potential is, what she's capable of. It's a prejudgment based on things that have nothing to do with her own life or success.
Yeah, and you could turn it the other way too, mm-hmm, in elevating the proletariat, which is the sort of collective, the communist version of the proletariat is good because it is the downtrodden. Well, that's a form of judging people by membership in a group. It's not even clear that that's a group, but that's the view on the Marxist view. I thought the other